Uh, either YouTube, it's E-Man here, and I think I wanted to talk about. Now, at some point, I hope to do a stream, and I'm probably going to be doing the game like xenogears. It's one of those like I think it's xenogears. It's an old PS1 RPG made back in that wow, what many of us consider the golden age of Squaresoft, a time where they made games that really anyone ever has. Xenogears was interesting. It was made at an interesting time, of course. You know, that era, like 98, you know, the late 90s, you know, Final Fantasy was Squaresoft's major thing. And a lot of the developers there had issues with why, you know, I like Final Fantasy. I know that lately some of the Final Fantasy games have kind of fallen short. Xenogears is interesting because it was a project that was done, and a lot of the people that worked on Xenogears, of course, went on to make Monolith Soft, and now they make, of course, like Xenoblade Chronicles, and there's been a few games that have been kind of spiritual successors or somewhat in that time frame. The PS1 game. It felt like a very original game. Perhaps maybe some of the stuff used in it is not really original, but original game. Completely different than Final Fantasy. It's like, you know. And I think for the most part, the game was done very well. Great music. I think the story was more ambitious than they had thought it was going to be. You know, and perhaps they had wanted it to be on 4 discs instead of the 2 it ended up being. And I know the things about how the second disc doesn't. The second disc is kind of weird, or it's kind of like you really almost no control over playing the game at that point. But I think the underlying story is quite good. And I've seen the videos about the storyline, and it's quite an ambitious thing. It's kind of sad that this series didn't really. Of course, I've played a lot of the Xenoblade Chronicles, and I love those games. Even the Wii game is it's still fun to play even today. But of course, Xenogears was an odd game because a lot of times it almost didn't even get released here because of the religious issues. So this game had a lot of fears and issues that people were thinking about. Of course, Xenogears, you can find it on, of course, it's on the PS1. I don't think it's ever been on Steam or any other thing, which is kind of upsetting. I don't want a remake. No, not a remake. It would be nice if it was on Steam and the graphics were a little bit enhanced. I mean, I would think not really a remake, but really like a special edition. You know, much like they have movies where extended version, like maybe they could add in all the stuff they had wanted to do before. There might be legal issues because Squaresoft may, somewhat own that, or maybe they're not allowed to exactly do what they want to do with it. Yeah. One of the biggest things I like about Xenogears is, of course, it has, it was supposedly the first game to have actual voice acting, anime scenes, with anime scenes. Some of them are kind of short. I kind of wish they had been longer or something instead of using like CGI things that they've done with Final Fantasy. It's kind of interesting to kind of make, feel like you're playing an anime perhaps at some points. It's just kind of amazing the stuff that this game gets right and then the stuff that just seems kind of weird, like it was a rushed project. And I have only recently known that Xenogears was a rushed project. And I guess if I think about it, there's a lot of RPGs coming out at that time, and Squaresoft probably saw more importance with Final Fantasy than they did Xenogears. And of course, I will say that the PlayStation One had tons of great RPGs. There was once a golden age of the RPG, and Squaresoft just kept pumping them out on the PlayStation. It does seem kind of weird that all of a sudden, they want to release these Final Fantasy games on other systems, especially on the Nintendo system. Of course, we've heard about Squaresoft like pretty much leaving, Nintendo and just putting everything on the PlayStation or maybe on the Saturn. And some of them may have been on the Saturn or whatever. Yeah. And I am hoping to perhaps to try to do a live stream and perhaps show myself playing this game. Well, I guess I could even show footage of playing live streaming, but I'd rather do live streaming with people talking to me or not. But perhaps I might just do a video on me playing it at some point. I've heard there's quite a cult following for this game, and I don't want to like tick anybody off. I admire it when games take big risks and they try to do something ambitious. I think we just don't have that a lot in this day and age. I know that making games is a lot more complicated. And as I've talked about movies, I think that people have, there's expectations. When you make a movie, you got to spend tons of money on CGI or spend tons of money, or there's not much of a point. And I think game making has gotten to that point. It's so expensive they don't want to take risks. I think Xenogears represents an age where people took risks and took chances. And I think Xenogears is another RPG that's not really talked about much because it's pretty much left. It hasn't been on anything else. It was on the PS1. Of course, you can get a PS3. The store is still running. You can get the PS1 version of the Xenogears on there. But I guess I should talk about it somewhat. The main character, Faye, which I know he gets a lot of hype because maybe he's dumb or something. But I've heard that has been decided that was because of translation issues. Yes, this game has some translation issues that I've recently have noticed. Back when I was younger playing it, I probably didn't really think much of it. Because I remember trying to find all these RPGs to play, and this was one particular one. I'd like to also explain my take on this game. I love this game. There was a part where I got stuck on it. There's a part where you're in a cave and you have to do the sand sensors. I remember doing the sand sensors and just getting stuck on the boss. I recently discovered, at one point I was like, oh, I didn't upgrade my gears. And once I got that done, I got the boss done. And I was like, yay, it's time to play the rest of the game. And believe it or not, I had a major problem. The disc, for whatever reason, wasn't working. Reason I had issues with the second disc, or might have been the first disc, I think. I finally got through that stage. It had been a couple of years I left it sitting because I was just mad and couldn't get by it. I finally figured out how to get by it, and then it just didn't work. It was really irritating, especially since I had bought the game, back when, I think I paid maybe $60 for it back when. So it was kind of irritating, especially since the place, I ended up having to go and actually rent the game to be able to actually finish the game. It was really irritating. But, it shows I really liked that game. I really wanted to get to the end of it a lot. So there are some parts in the game you got to really use your noggin. It's not like many RPGs. You really need to figure it out. Another big point people, a lot of people talk about is, of course, the death blows, or the moves that you can do. Apparently, if you input like the random buttons, you have like a weak, a medium, and a powerful attack, and you have to like figure out how to use those buttons to unlock death blows. Faye, as I've heard, is the hardest time doing death blows. He needs like a lot of work to get his death blows to work. Everyone else's death blows are usually supposedly easier. Well, he's the main character. I mean, you're going to be playing with him for a while. There's a lot of characters in this game. There's a lot of them. And I feel like each character kind of really brings something to fighting. I know there is, another character that's kind of goofy and silly, and it's not really, they're not really even in the instruction booklet, I don't think. The goofy character that you may not use. I will say it's also an RPG. You really need to get plenty of. I think they use money, or they use gil as a thing in this game. I don't know. But whatever, you do need to get a lot of money because you'll be having to upgrade these gears. Well, if you don't upgrade them, then you have a harder time fighting enemies, because upgrading them can make their attacks better. Of course, when you play as a gear, you have fuel. So you always have to worry about your fuel. Of course, early in the game, there's not really any way to heal a gear. So you have to keep that in mind the first couple battles you fight with the thing. I think that now that I'm older and maybe a little more experienced, I kind of started to figure this game out a little bit. And it is kind of satisfying to finally kind of have a sense that maybe I have this game figured out now. So anyway, that's a little bit of my thoughts on the gameplay and stuff. Now, maybe I should talk about the story a little bit. When the game opens, they're on this giant like colony ship. I would assume it is. There's a lot of people on it. And especially there's like an evil supercomputer that's kind of taking over the ship. I guess what I've heard is that they were trying to bring some supercomputer that was kind of going bonkers, and they wanted to get rid of it. And it ends up taking over the ship. And ultimately, the crew seems to be getting killed. They try to evacuate, the people are getting killed. And then, of course, the captain has to like self-destruct the ship. The ship crashes and broke up. Supposedly Deus, this evil computer, went somewhere. There's another being that was born, like a woman being that was, she was born, and then of course the pieces were broken up. And Deus, of course, he wants to be rebuilt. And of course, in order to do that, there's going to have to be people are going to have to be sacrificed to them, and they basically start creating humans on this world so that they can technically feed Deus and get him rebuilt. But he's of course running out of time, and a lot of time has passed. A lot of time. We're talking about a lot, like 10,000 years of time. It does kind of remind me of, much heat for this, but it reminds me a little bit of Dune, from a storyline sense. Because I have looked up what Dune is, and the whole sci-fi science fiction series of Dune has a very complex story that covers a long period of time. Maybe Xenogears doesn't cover as long of a time, but it feels like that kind of a thing, that there's a prolonged like storyline, and technically the Dune sci-fi storyline is incomplete. I mean, I think Dune was a great science fiction book series that was very ambitious. And I think, unfortunately, it would be cool to see if they could finally finish it, you know. And let's think about in Doom, you know, a lot of times we have people that had memories of past things, you know, genetic lines. And well, I think the interesting thing is that Doom has a outreaching story, and I think Xenogears does too. It's, you know, a very ambitious story for something. I mean, it feels like it should have been that this should have been a giant franchise. You know, of course, one of the major animes I saw, you know, the Sci-Fi Channel back way back when I used to watch anime. I did see the anime Akira, and I know a lot of people have said that that was like one of the major ones that was brought here to the U.S. Yeah, and of course I know the dubbing is probably bad. I know a lot of the ones from that era, the dubbing is just horrible. If you can adjust it to so where they speak Japanese, you know, with English subtitles on the bottom, that's probably the best way to view foreign films. I have seen some foreign films with a dubbing issue. Yeah, it's just kind of annoying. Akira probably wasn't like the best one ever made, but a lot of people have said there's a lot of influences that it influenced a lot. In my opinions, I think Xenogears probably influenced a lot. Well, I mean, if you think about it, there's been a few game series that have come out of it. You know, the people that worked on it, you know, they were convinced to start their own studio because of what they wanted to do. And it's sad to see people don't want to take chances like that anymore. You know, of course, we've had the Kickstarter program. A lot of developers are like, you know, I just need to show these guys that people want this kind of game. You know, maybe that's a little bit different. You know, like we know like Bloodstained with the Castlevania spiritual successor, of course. And I think it's unfortunate that Konami won't just work out with these people and probably, you know, maybe we'll see a new Castlevania game out of the Kickstarter thing, but I'm not holding out much hope. Well, anyway, I hope that, you know, might spark someone's interest to kind of like see Xenogears. So hopefully, at some point, I'll be doing a video about that game, enjoying myself playing it, and also probably perhaps showing you some of the music from this game, which is the music in this game is just great. I realize a lot of the music is reused a lot because, well, a lot, at most of the points, a lot of this music, especially like one of the sad songs, it plays when it's supposed to, and it does. You know, I might get a little choked up about some of the characters and what's going on. I mean, but of course, being older, having experienced some of these feelings that these characters have, it affects me a little bit more. I do. I hope that maybe sometime and it might be like you know, a more HD enhanced like one on like Steam or the systems. It would be nice, you know, not a remake, but you know, a special edition. As I've said, as I said a little bit ago, I would like a, you know, they could add in everything that they weren't able to do, and perhaps change it, or perhaps not. But I do know a lot of these RPGs need to be enjoyed. People really need to see these RPGs. The one RPG of course, I've talked about a little bit, Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is a very, you know, that's an unknown, almost unknown classic because it's very hard to play it because it has supposedly Sega lost the source code, so we never see that game. But at least in Xenogears, they still have the base code and it's still out there. But you know, and of course, people keep saying there's eventually going to be a time that all these retro games and retro consoles are just all going to quit working. I don't really see that as happening yet. You know, I really don't yet. It's always a concern for me because, you know, recently I've started buying cartridges and there's always that thought, you know, eventually almost all of these cartridges and systems are just going to quit working, and then we may not be able to play these games anymore. And the way things are going with emulators and ROMs, and it seems silly to me because a lot of times I'm not interested in like stealing somebody's thing or making money off of something. Well, anyway, I hope to see you guys later, and maybe later I'll show some footage of playing xenogears. I think it's one of those games that is just really great. And I do have, you know, of course, the original copy. I was able to get, you know, another version, another 2 discs of it that were actually working right. So, yeah. So I do, you know, I have that, and I also have the PS3 download of the PS1 game. Well, so I'll catch you guys later then. This is E-Man signing off. Take it easy.